Last week, I worked on the DC McFarlane Batman figure. The Dark Knight figures are awesome. I'm very glad I got them. Today, I'm gonna work on this Carnage figure. Most of you know I mostly focus on MCU characters. There are several reasons for that. The main reason is because I want to keep my collection under control. Once I start collecting a new line, it's gonna be incredibly difficult to stop. Another reason why I generally prefer live-action movie characters is because, with the movie characters, there's a definitive look to them. I can refer to how they look in the movies and in the behind-the-scene footages to see all the textures and details. But with cartoons or comic characters, it's a bit more challenging. There are so many different interpretations of the same characters, so it's hard to decide which figure to get. The other thing is that many of these characters are meant to be in 2D, so the anatomy doesn't always translate in toy form. That said, figures nowadays are pretty good, like the Spider-Verse figures. Those ones are very well done in my opinion. So that made me want to expand my collection a bit. Long story short, that is why I decided to get this Carnage figure. I already have a comic Venom. It only makes sense to get Carnage as well. Let's deconstruct this figure. There's an FAQ on the paint and brushes I use in the description box below. Okay, to be very honest, it took me quite a while to figure out what to do with this figure. This figure is great. There's so much molded details. Looking at it up close, I can see all the muscle definition, but it is not noticeable from afar, so I want to see if I can make it more obvious. I'm surprised at how much black paint is on the figure. I think they actually painted all the veins black, except for the tendrils. I feel like there should be some black details there. Oh, I also love that it comes with two different heads and a removable back piece. It's almost like two figures in one. This is gonna be interesting. I would say this figure has more of a 2D look to it. But you know me, I like 3D things. So my goal today is to see if I can make all the details pop. So... Hello, this is Ken. I like making things. I like making things out of paper, and I like making things cooler. Especially my figures. Sometimes figures don't look all that screen accurate. All they need is a bit of touch up here and there to unleash their hidden potential. I also love using everyday tools and materials to recreate iconic scenes from my figures, so they can shine on my display. Subscribe to my channel and join my DIY adventure as I ask myself the same question every week. Can I make it? Let's start with the muscles. I can go in with a fine brush to define them right away, but I will have to be very precise. So instead, I'm going to go over the body with the red first. This will give the paint a base to stick to. And it will also be easier for me to fix mistakes too. Instead of wiping off my errors, I can just cover it up. Alright, let's do a test. I'm going to use this purple to define the muscles. I'm not going to use black because that would be too similar to the veins. The tricky part here is to define the muscles without muddying the entire figure. For those who have been watching my videos for a while, you know I like using purple to deepen the red. I do this to all my Spider-Man figures and other figures with an orange red. It's not working this time. I need a cooler color, so let's try a blue. The blue shows up better. So let me go over all the little crevices on the backside. So this is what it looks like. Not the cleanest line work, but that's okay, because I can now clean up the lines with the red. I can tone down any areas that look too harsh, and I can reshape the lines a bit with the red too. That looks better. Okay, my test is complete. I think this will work. This is my strategy today. A base layer of red, then a bit of purple as my shading color, and use the blue to add more depth. And clean up any mistakes with the red again. Looking at it from the back, it's quite jarring to see how unpainted the tendrils are. So hopefully I can use the purple to give the illusion of depth. I'm also going to emphasize these areas where the tendrils intersect, to add even more depth and separation. On to the front side. Oh, this side looks orange to me now. Let me repeat the steps. You know, normally I work on figures that are considered subpar or not great that needed fixing. But recently, the figures I've been working on are all fantastic. And I like that it changed how I approach figures. Instead of trying to make things look absolutely perfect or 100% screen accurate, these great figures allow me to try things and let myself make mistakes. There's less pressure in a way. The figure's already great, so I don't have to focus on making it better. You may be wondering why I'm bringing this up. It's because I had a hard time deciding what to do with Carnage. In some cases, Carnage is depicted with flat colors, very 2D. Other times, he's depicted as this slimy monster like Venom. It was really difficult for me to decide which direction to go with because I felt like I had to end up with a Carnage that's 100% comic accurate, which I realized was impossible. That is when I finally decided to let go of that pressure I placed on myself. I'm just gonna go with my gut reaction and go from there. Okay, back to the figure. I did the red, purple, and blue. There's still not enough definition. Let me emphasize the highlights a bit with the pink. I'm going to use this pink to exaggerate the contrast. The pink and the red will also make it look more like flesh tone too. Can't forget the tendrils. Gotta make them look even more three-dimensional. It's better. I want to add a bit more shine to the red, kinda like how it looks here. So I'm going to use this metallic red paint as my highlights, but on the actual high points on the figure. Normally, I would use the glossy varnish to add the shine, but I don't want to do that here, because the black veins are already glossy. If I apply the varnish over the red too, then the two textures will become too similar. I want the red to look more like flesh tone with the black slimy symbiote veins on top of it. That way I will have two distinct textures on the figure. Ooh, look at that. I like the way it reflects the light. It's kinda subtle but not really. Now that the figure is all shiny, I think there needs to be more shading. So this time, I'm going to use the brown, but I'm only applying it in the deepest crevices. I want the muscles to pop, but I can't apply too much. The brown is too similar in shade to the black, so I gotta be careful not to overdo it. Alright, this is what it looks like. It looks pretty good to me. Let's move on to the black veins. My end goal is to make these black veins super glossy. But first, I gotta prep the surface. I find that the glossy varnish doesn't stick well to the plastic directly. It applies better when there's a base layer of paint on the surface. So I'm just gonna quickly go over all the veins with the black first. I'm also gonna add a few black lines on the tendrils, so it looks more like the symbiote is growing outwards. Done. Now it's time to go over all the black areas with the glossy varnish. Ooh, you can kinda see it already. The glossy varnish is making the black goo stand out even more. Look at that. Look how defined the torso is now. Nice. On to the face. If there's one thing that's consistent with the majority of the Carnage designs, it's that the black on the face is a flat black. It's usually depicted with no highlights at all, just pure black. So I'm going to mattify the black by rubbing a thin coat of paint over it to get rid of that plastic shine. I'm also going to do some minor touch-ups on the eyes. Alright, now I'm going to do the same thing I did earlier, painting those veins black first before I apply the varnish over them to make them glossy. And I'm not going to add any varnish over the face. Oh, can't forget the red areas. Let me add some shading quickly. Alright, here's Absolute Carnage's head. The changes are minor. It's mostly just the face being matte now. And here's the other Carnage head. The veins look much more three-dimensional now. Awesome. And here's the finished figure. Starting with Absolute Carnage. I like that the red is not as orange now. I feel like the red now is more accurate to how he looks in the cartoons and comics. The tendrils also look much better now too. They don't look as disjointed. Here's a mega close-up look. Is that too close? It's kinda making me feel uncomfortable. I grew up watching the 90s animated Spider-Man. So this version of Carnage is the Carnage I'm familiar with. And I have to say, this looks awesome. This is exactly how I picture Carnage in figure form. Is this the perfect Carnage figure? I've always been more of a Venom fan, but this figure is insanely cool. Not only does it look great, it's also very well made too. It's got all the necessary details. And I like that you can swap the heads and the back. It's like a 2-in-1 figure. What do you think? Do you like what I've done? Let me know down below. I am very satisfied with this figure. I knew that this was a very popular figure, but I didn't know why. I just thought it was popular because it's Carnage. But I understand now. This is a very solid figure. I'm glad they re-released it. While I don't think I did too much to the figure, I do think the changes I did made the figure look more gross. Oh, and I find myself loving the Absolute Carnage head more and more, even though I'm not familiar with that version of Carnage. I love that smiling expression. There's so much personality on that face. It makes the poses look so much more sinister. And of course, I have to bring in Venom. These two look amazing together. They look cohesive but also very different, but in a good way. Alright, let's end this for the photo shoot. I had so much fun posing Carnage, especially with this head. It was like impossible to get a bad pose. You can just feel the energy. It's so cool. And it's equally cool with the other Carnage head. I know my goal was to make it look more 3D, but I gotta admit, this still looks like a 2D character. It looks just like the Carnage from the comic books, but the details are there, especially when you look at the figure up close. Which version of Carnage do you prefer? I wanna say the Absolute Carnage looks better by itself, but when paired with Venom, I do prefer the more classic look. Look at them! I love the polar opposite color theme. Venom is blue and white, and Carnage is red and black. Okay, I know Venom is technically black, but he's often shown with a bit of blue. Check out my Venom video if you want to know how I added the blue shine. Give it a like if you enjoyed today's video. Subscribe to see more content like this. And as always, stay inspired and I'll see you next week. I can make it, so can you.